Have you ever heard of a tree that legally owns itself? Well, in Athens, Georgia, there's a white oak that, according to a fantastic local legend, does just that. It supposedly owns itself and the 8 feet of land around its trunk. It's a really strange and wonderful story, but it also cracks open a much bigger conversation about our relationship with the entire natural world.
The whole thing starts with these words, right here. They're from an alleged deed written way back in the early 1800s by a man named Colonel William Henry Jackson. Now, this guy was a professor, a soldier, and the son of a Georgia governor. And supposedly, he just loved this oak tree so much, he'd spent his childhood playing under it, that he wanted to make sure it was protected forever. And his solution? He decided to give the tree its own freedom.
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's a beautiful thought, a really poetic gesture, but can a tree, a non-human thing, actually legally own property? That's what we're going to dig into. And believe me, the answer is a whole lot more complex and fascinating than you might think. Okay, so this legend is, no pun intended, deeply rooted in the city of Athens. The story goes that sometime between 1820 and 1832, Colonel Jackson signed this deed. And with that one single incredible act, a simple landmark was transformed into a local icon, and eventually, the very unlikely symbol of a global movement. But get this. The story doesn't even stop with the original tree. After standing for centuries, that first oak finally fell during a storm in 1942. But the community wasn't about to let the legend die. Nope, in 1946, the local garden club took an acorn from the original tree, grew a sapling, and planted it in the very same spot. Today, the son of the tree that owns itself stands there, proudly carrying on the title.
All right, so we have this really heartwarming story of succession, but let's circle back to that big question. Even though the whole town absolutely believes in this story, the legal foundation for the tree's ownership is, well, to put it mildly, it's shaky. That deed, assuming it ever even existed, has some really big problems.
You see, under common law, a tree just can't own property. For one, it doesn't have legal capacity. To own something, you have to be a legal person, and a tree isn't. Second, it can't exactly reach out and consciously accept a deed, can it? And here's the real kicker. The tree is on land that Jackson never even owned in the first place. It's part of the city's right-of-way. So legally speaking, the whole thing is pretty much a non-starter.
So if the deed isn't legally sound, where did this whole legend even come from? Well, you can trace it all back to a single source, a front-page story in the Athens Weekly Banner newspaper on August 12, 1890. The writer, who was anonymous, is the only person in history who ever claimed to have physically seen the deed. And with that one article, a piece of local folklore got cemented into fact, and it just stuck.
But here's the twist. This is where this story gets really good. Even though the tree's ownership is a legal myth, the idea behind it turned out to be incredibly powerful. The simple notion that nature itself could have rights, well, that planted a seed that would grow into a very real legal revolution.
So yeah, the story of the Athens oak is basically a folktale, but its simple, kind of radical idea really resonated with people. It became this accidental first step towards a serious legal philosophy that is now changing laws all around the world. We're talking about the rights of nature movement.
And that philosophy has a name, environmental personhood. It's the formal legal idea that things in nature, like rivers, forests, whole ecosystems, can be recognized as legal persons. Now, that doesn't mean a river can vote or open a bank account, but it does mean it can have rights. And crucially, those rights can be defended in court by human guardians.
The modern version of this idea really took off back in 1972. You had a law professor named Christopher Stone publish this groundbreaking article asking, should trees have standing? Basically, should they be able to sue? And in that very same year, Supreme Court Justice William Douglas argued in a famous dissent that natural objects should have exactly that right.
So from those big ideas back in the 70s, the concept of environmental personhood has jumped from the pages of law journals into actual courtrooms all over the world. It's creating a whole new frontier in environmental law.
I mean, just look at the momentum in the 21st century. It's been incredible. Rivers in Colombia, New Zealand, India, and Canada have all been granted some form of legal personhood. That means they can now be protected in court from things like pollution and overdevelopment.
But listen, this is far from a settled issue. It's a real fight. On one hand, you have these huge successes like New Zealand's Wanganui River. It was granted full personhood in a landmark treaty with the Maori people. But on the other hand, a recent claim for Canada's Athabasca River was shot down by regulators. They basically said, a river isn't a person under our laws. So this is a very dynamic, very contested legal battle happening right now. Okay, so after that quick trip around the globe, let's bring it all the way back home, back to that one white oak in Athens, Georgia. If its legal title is a myth, what's its real significance? What does it truly mean?
Here's the thing. The real value of the tree that owns itself was never about a piece of paper. It's about the very real century-long commitment from the people of Athens to take care of it. The legend's true power was never legal. It was inspirational. It convinced an entire community to become the tree's collective guardian.
So the tree's real legacy is just massive. It's a powerful symbol for the whole community. It's so important to the town's identity that the street literally has to bend around it. It accidentally became a precursor to a global movement, and it's a living, breathing lesson in how to see the world not as property to be owned, but as a neighbor to be respected.
And all of that leaves us with one final big thought. This whole story starts with the very human idea of property and ownership. But maybe the tree's ultimate lesson is something else entirely. Maybe, for nature, the most fundamental right of all isn't the right to own anything, but simply the right to exist.